So because they're so self-conscious, that's why children can learn a language so much faster
that's
than
interesting,
adults.
yeah.
That's,
Well, I don't want to hold up Lauren here, but thank you for coming today. We're very grateful to Lauren from Transparent Languages for coming to talk about their product, which you all have access to with your Hooks It Library card for free. So that's fantastic. You can take advantage of this. And Lauren's going to teach us how to sign up and install it on your mobile devices and get learning that language you've been hoping to tackle all summer long, right? Okay, so I'll turn things over to you.
Awesome, thank you. So at any point, if you have any questions about anything that I'm doing, just shout it out. I'm not a formal person, so just shout out your question, ask it. I'd rather have you ask questions while I'm going through it than try and wait till the end and save it. Okay, so in order to find transparent language, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to the Hooks It Library website, come over here to Research, and then go down to Language Learning. And in the language learning category, you will find Transparent Language Online. Click on the link here, and you're going to have to sign in with your library barcode and password. Once you do that, I don't have a library card, so I can't go through this, but once you do that, just fill in your credentials, hit log in, and you're going to be taken to a Transparent Language Online page where you can create an account. You're going to want to click the blue sign up button, and that's indicated on the sheet with the purple bar going across the top. So just lets you know that you click that blue sign up button, you create your account. So you need to actually create an account in Transparent Language Online, and then you'll be automatically signed into the system. So I'm already signed in, and this is my learning dashboard here. I'm going to walk you through a couple of the aspects of just the learning dashboard itself to start, and then I'll go into some of the activities and go in a little deeper with the program. So on the dashboard, you have a couple different modules. You have a learning path, a learned items chart, and you also have this practice section down here. The learning path is something that you can customize right to your desired outcomes. If you are traveling abroad and you're going in, maybe a year or so, you're going somewhere abroad, you may just want to stick with our course that we have set up for you. So in every language, we're going to pre-populate content for you on here. And it's going to be what we're calling our Essentials course. And our Essentials course really teaches you the essentials of a language, especially if you are traveling to another country. So it is going to walk you through a lot of that vocabulary that you're going to need: restaurant vocabulary, hotel vocabulary, directional, things like that. So you can choose to just follow our path in order. You can skip around all the way to the bottom if you wanted to. And you can also add other content from our content repository to the learning path. So you can really customize this however you want. At the top of every learning path, when you first sign in, is going to be this welcome lesson. I highly recommend doing the welcome lesson because it actually walks you through a few different activities in the language. It also teaches you 5 words and phrases right off the bat. So you're going to learn 5 words, and you're also going to see a little bit of how the activities work. So it's a great activity. It's a great lesson just to start with. And in any language where this is available, you're also going to have an alphabet familiarization. These alphabet lessons are going to be especially helpful if you're learning a language that doesn't use a Latin-based alphabet, so a language like Chinese. You're also going to have Russian will be very helpful to go through. So you're going to find them, but you will find these alphabet familiarizations in any language. So just go on through, take a look at it if you want, or skip over it, totally up to you. Over here, we also have the learned items chart. So this learned items chart is actually going to keep track of everything that you learn as you progress through the system. So it's going to keep track of all the words and phrases that you're learning, and it's going to store them here. So you can see I'm learning Spanish right now, and I have 89 words that I've learned in my time learning Spanish. over time, the items that you've learned, we're going to tell you that they might be stale in your memory, asking you to go back and refresh them. So the refresh that you do is something that you choose to do at any point. You can do that 10 days after you learn something, or you can do it a year after you learn something. It's totally up to you. We're just hinting at you that you may have forgotten it and just asking you if you want to go back and refresh it. And if you remember it during the refresh, great. You probably won't see that word or phrase again for a really long time. There's also this practice section down here. The practice section is really great if you just want to focus on a particular skill. So the practice section will actually allow you to hone in on particular skills, so you can focus on listening, speaking, reading, or writing, and you can pick any content that you want to do it with. So if you just want to do a pronunciation practice activity, you don't want to do anything else that you might find in these courses over here, you can come over to the practice section, you can select your content, and you can do that. So that's a really great area if you just want to focus on something. And I'll show you a little bit about how that works in a few minutes. So within the learning path, you also have, like I mentioned, you can customize the learning path. So this Browse tab over here allows you to go in and browse for more content. You can look at courses, other courses that are available for the language. You can look at supplemental vocabulary, and you can also look at some of the reference, which would be grammar, grammar tips, files, videos, things like that. I will note that content varies by language. So you may find if you were once looking at Spanish and then you went over to a language such as Quechua, you're going to see a really big difference in the types of content that's available. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at it. Something you see in one language might not be available in another language, but most of the time it is. So the supplemental vocabulary is great. The supplemental vocabulary allows you to go in and you can pick other vocabulary to learn. So in the essentials courses, you're going to learn words and phrases. And you're also, for a particular phrase being, I'd like a glass of water. But if you really want to say, I'd like a cup of tea, you need the words for cup and you need the words for tea. So we don't necessarily teach you everything in the courses, but the supplemental vocabulary is where you're going to find a lot of that extra vocab that you need. So in the general vocabulary, you're going to find topically based lessons. Things like animals, adjectives, restaurant, clothing, colors, common verbs, communication facilitation phrases, and the list goes on and on and on. In most cases, there's about 1,500 supplemental vocabulary words and phrases in any given language, so you have a lot to go through here if you wanted to go through all of these lists. Also in the Browse section, for some languages, you will find business vocabulary and medical vocabulary as well. Business vocabulary is going to be business topics, some of it being advertising, different accounting phrases. You'll also find computer, marketing terms, so that's some of the business vocabulary that you'll find. And there's also medical vocabulary in our Spanish section as well. So there's just some words and phrases that you can go in and learn in Spanish as well if you were in a medical profession.
Now, will each language have those options?
Not every language does. It's only available in a limited number of languages for the medical and the business terms.
Okay.
But the general vocabulary, that will be found in pretty much every language that you look at.
So medical and business are limited.
Yes, yes. If you're learning Spanish, it's available in Spanish.
Okay.
Which is, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
Which is the second piece, is English still the #1 language in worldwide, or
is it Spanish now?
It actually, I could be wrong, I had a whole poster on this actually. For a while, I believe it was Chinese. And then I think it was Spanish followed by English. I could be wrong though, so don't quote me on that.
Well, way back, it was French. French was the
Mhm.
one that, then I'm not sure, but I think English supplanted French.
I believe it still has, yes.
And yeah, and then I didn't know about that Chinese.
Chinese is a very widely spoken language. It used to be at the top. I can't remember if it actually is at the top
Because I
anymore.
know Spanish is very widely.
Yes,
It's always been
yes.
widely spoken.
Right. Spanish is definitely either the number one or the number two. I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head. But so for different languages, for the major languages such as French, Russian, Spanish, Italian, German, you will find a very robust set of content. Those are very major languages to be spoken by English speakers wanting to learn those second languages. Those are major languages, so you will find a lot of content in those languages. And I think a lot of those are some of the languages people had mentioned they were learning before we started.
You were right, Chinese, Spanish, and English.
Oh, I was right. Okay,
Yeah.
cool, awesome.
And Hindi if you're interested.
Yes, we actually do have content for Hindi, so
So English is third.
yeah.
Wow. How does this system, this method, compare with the Rosetta Stone
Sure.
method? How does,
Good question. It's a totally different methodology for learning a language. So Rosetta Stone assumes you're a child learning a language for the first time. They don't use your native language at all to teach you a second language, whereas we do use your native language to teach you a second language. So in most cases, it's going to be using English to teach you a second language. In other instances, we have English content for speakers of other languages, as well as other language pairs, like French for Portuguese speakers, different pairs like that. But for the most part, if you're just looking at the French content, it's going to be French for English speakers. But it's a different methodology. So we use your native language. Rosetta Stone assumes you're a child learning the language for the first time.
Is Pimsleur also set up that way? Because I do have the CDs on that. Those programs.
I believe Pimsleur uses your first language, but I'm not 100% positive on that.
but wouldn't you say that it's more difficult that the system, the method that you, for Penza and this method, because what you're doing is you're translating from your language, native language, into the language, the foreign language that you're trying to learn. Isn't that a
Adults have an easier time with that. They can find common associations with words and phrases. So if you look at a language like French, you might see some, like the word for T is K. It looks similar. You can kind of draw some similarities in the pronunciation and in the actual spelling of the word. You can kind of people tend to make those associations when they're using their native language. Rosetta Stone also uses a lot of picture association. We don't tend to use as much picture association. They'll show you a picture and ask you what the picture is, but there's only one right answer for it. So sometimes it's a boy standing under an airplane. In which instance when would you really need to know that the boy is standing under the airplane? If there's a boy out on the runway standing under the airplane, there's probably a much bigger problem than that. But looking at a picture like that and trying to draw the correct answer, you're not sure if you're supposed to be talking about the boy, his age, the color of his hair, the color of his shirt, the plane, the weather outside. What are you actually trying to produce in that? So it can be more frustrating. It also can be more difficult for learners just using that picture association and relying on it more heavily. So that's some of just the ways that it's different. We've had studies done that use our methodology compared to Rosetta Stone's, and people learn faster with ours than with theirs.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great questions. So in addition to the other types of content that you can browse for, some languages also have multiple courses available. They'll have different types of courses. I will say that we have these essentials courses, which I mentioned. The version number of the courses does not indicate the level of the course. The version number indicates when it was made by us, and it indicates how much content and the types of activities that are actually in it. So if you are in a situation where you see an Essentials version 2, like I have here, and an Essentials version 3, go for the version 3. Version 3 has more activities in it, and it's just going to be a more robust course for you as a user. So go with the version 3. Not that the version 2 is bad, version 3 just has more. So if you're ever at it and have a question about which one to pick, do that. It's still going to teach you the same content. In other cases, you are going to find these other lessons, like Cinco de Mayo, baseball vocabulary. These are lessons that we are producing on a monthly basis. So every month we're producing a new lesson in a language. It's random. I mean, I know what's coming up, but in most instances we're not adding something to Spanish every single month per se. We're just adding a new lesson to a new language. So for Cinco de Mayo this year, we created a whole Cinco de Mayo lesson and made it available in this program.
What does that mean?
I'm sorry?
What does that mean? I know Cinco de Mayo is the 5th of May.
We just created a lesson with vocabulary in it. So
Related to
Cinco de Mayo.
Yep.
We also do the same thing for St. Patrick's Day. So in Irish, we had a St. Patrick's Day lesson, and it just walked people through vocabulary words like shamrock and gold and beer and leprechaun, just words that are commonly associated with the holiday. Just a little bit of extra for you. For Major League Baseball opening day this year, we also made available these baseball vocabulary, vocabulary lessons. And it just walks you through different baseball-related vocabulary. So you'll find things like that in some languages as well.
So you can carry a conversation with someone and understand what, the plays are and everything else.
Yes, you would be able to. We did teach, different plays, different procedures. The amount of your ability to actually carry on a conversation may not be dictated by this. It would rely a lot on your ability your grammar ability, how well you grasp grammar concepts. But in terms of just knowing baseball vocabulary, you definitely have a pretty good grasp with these lessons. So it's just something a little bit different, something a little fun to do. And then in some languages like Spanish, we also have a conversations course. So this is a little bit more advanced, but it walks you through, it's a whole lesson on a conversation. So you actually hear a native conversation and you learn different words and phrases through that as well.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
In the Spanish language,
Yeah.
now when you're listening to a conversation, which Spanish are you using the Spaniard Spanish, like the the mother
There's
language?
Castilian, yep.
Castilian, right? Castilian Spanish. You're not using.
We do have content for Castilian Spanish. Right now I'm actually looking at Latin American Spanish, but we also have content separate for Castilian Spanish. So in here, if you actually wanted to come up here and browse the different languages that we have, you would see that there's Spanish Castilian and Spanish Latin American here. So it just depends.
Is this, the second one, not the Castilian, but the other one?
Latin American?
Yes, is that the one that most Hispanics in the United States speak?
That's the one most people tend to learn. You're still going to find different cultural nuances of the language that they're speaking, more slang that they're speaking. We're not actually teaching slang in our program, so that's something that you would need to actually, carry on a conversation with someone and learn those slang terms. But they will understand you if you were to, speak anything you're learning in here. And same thing goes for Portuguese. I know someone mentioned they were learning Portuguese. So we also have Brazilian and European Portuguese in here as well. So you will find different clues like that if there is to talk about the dialect of the language if that's necessary. So I'm going to go back into my browse. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to show you how you can add items to your learning path. So like I said, you can customize your learning path with any of the vocabulary lessons, anything that you want. So I'm actually just going to come in here. I'm just going to pick these two animals. And by clicking this plus button here, it actually adds them to my path. So you can see that the plus button has now changed to a minus sign. If I want to remove it from my learning path, all I would do would be to click the minus sign. But I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to show you that it added them to the learning path. So when you add something to your learning path, it actually adds them all the way at the bottom. So anytime you add something, it's going to appear all the way at the bottom. So just don't be alarmed if it doesn't show up at the top, it's at the bottom. And you can move everything around on your learning path that you want. So if I actually want to move this animals lesson all the way up to the top, I can do exactly that. I can move it around, so I can move it up closer to the top. If I decide later on that, you know, I don't need any of these other units here, I'm going to remove them. So I can just come in here and select remove, and it takes them away. So you can shuffle stuff around on your learning path as well. The item at the top might be the item that you're working on at the time. It might be the item that you want to put at the top of your path. You can completely customize everything that you want. So other things on this dashboard that you'll see, I kind of showed you how to switch languages. So if you start out learning Spanish and it's fine and it's great, but you just decide in a couple weeks that you don't want to learn Spanish anymore and you actually want to learn Italian, you can come in here. You can find Italian, and all you do is click on the language and it will change the language for you that's on your dashboard. So the next time that you sign into the program, it's going to remember what language you were looking at previously. So if you switched from Spanish to Italian during one time that you were signed in, it's going to show you Italian the next time that you sign in because that's the one that you were last learning.
Does it save any of the progress you made in another language?
It does. It will always save your progress. So I have 89 learned items in Spanish, and I have about 240 of them in French. And it just saves them and it accumulates them. So if you just did the welcome lesson in every language, you'd get 5 items learned in every language, and it's going to save your progress with every lesson that you do, every activity, every amount of content that you learn. So it's going to save everything.
Yeah. I just want to contribute, Italian is the sweetest language. It's the, really, I'm not being partial because was my first language, but it is so sweet when it's well spoken.
Yes,
of course.
yes.
Yeah, the northern part of Italy, they speak in Florence. I think the Florentines have the nicest, their Italian is beautiful.
Oh, good. Well, if anyone's learning Italian, you're going to be learning the sweetest language. I haven't actually tried learning much Italian myself, but maybe I'll take a look at it.
It's very similar. A lot of it is very similar to Spanish. But, let's say an Italian would have an easy time learning Spanish and vice versa.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Good. So if you know a little bit of Spanish, you might have an easy time. I've noticed that when I studied French throughout high school and college, and learning Spanish, there are definitely very many similarities as I go through. So you will find that as you go through languages as well.
There are more similarities between Spanish and Italian than French and Spanish.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it.
Just, I took French in high school, and
Okay.
there was male, female words. For instance, Spanish, are there male and female, like la lune or le,
Gender.
Gender,
Yeah,
you're going to find, no matter what language you learn, if there are those gender articles for a language, it will tell you. In some instances as well, you may learn a vocabulary word or phrase that goes through just the masculine way of producing it. But if there is a feminine way, there may be a little hint on the side of the of the word during the lesson that says if you were speaking to a female, you would say it this way. So the program will walk you through those, the different articles for the language if there is one.
There are 6 languages that derive from they call them Romance language.
Mm-hmm.
So I think all of them have a gender, male and female gender difference.
I believe they do as well.
Pronouns.
Yeah.
And articles.
Yeah. And you'll learn all of that in our program. So if there are gender, any sort of articles that go in front of nouns, you will find that in the program. And if you ever had a question about them, I didn't go over this, but in the browse section, there is other content in here. So this grammar reference is really great if you're looking to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the language. Maybe you want some more knowledge about the different articles. You can come in here and you can actually look at the singular and the plural, if there's masculine and feminine, how it changes. The program, these are more for reading. They're not lessons. They don't have activities associated with them. But if you were interested in diving a little bit deeper into the grammar aspect of the language, you'd find a lot of that in here. And within every topic that you pick, it will also show you related topics as well. So you could go, previous and next, you can go right in order, or you could jump around in here. It's totally up to you. So the grammar reference is a good place if you did have a question about articles or anything like that.
The problem with French is there are a lot of words that are either masculine or feminine, but they're not gender.
Right.
Like la lune.
Right.
Moon is not a male or a female. I mean, it's a moon.
Right. So if there wasn't,
the only way I could handle that was just to memorize.
Yeah.
So it didn't make any sense,
Yeah, sometimes there's ways of understanding what the ending of the word is. That sometimes determines what the article that goes in front.
Well, just the way it would, so you say la lune, and if by mistake you would put the masculine pronoun le lune, it wouldn't sound right. Just that, it's like music. Language is like music. If you hit a wrong note in music, And the same thing in language. So la lune sounds correct as opposed to lune.
But if you have any questions about them, the program, within our program, if you were to learn the moon in French, it will show you what article comes in front of it. So you will know what's coming. That goes for any noun that you're learning in the program. It will show you the article, and if it was a phrase that had an article in it, so it could change based on if you were talking to a male versus a female, the program would also tell you that.
Actually, isn't the letter E at the end of a French, I'm talking about French, isn't the letter E at the end of a word in French feminine? Like femme?
I believe it is, but I don't want to commit myself to that because it's been a while since I took an intensive French class, and I just remember a lot of things from French. I could probably get by if I went to France.
Yeah. French is a difficult language. It's not because of that, it's just the way there are so many silent letters in a word. They're in there, but you don't pronounce them.
Yeah, that happens with, yeah.
While Spanish, Italian, I don't know about Portuguese, but Spanish, Italian are phonetic. Every letter is pronounced. Those are the only two languages that are phonetic.
Yeah, they're all different, and within our program too, if you ever have a question about how something's pronounced, there is native speaker pronunciation associated with every word or phrase that you see. So you will be able to hear how it's pronounced as well, just to make sure that you're understanding the pronunciation and that you can actually repeat it.
That's why operas are written in Italian, most of them operas.
Oh, really?
Yes, because of the phonetic language.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And it's easier for mute when you're singing to to pronounce it in Italian. It fits in with the music.
Oh, that's very cool. I did not know that.
And even musical terminology, like
Mhm.
fortissimo, pianissimo, it's all in Italian.
Okay, I learn something new every day. So like I mentioned at the beginning, one of the best places to start with transparent language online is the welcome lesson. So I moved stuff around on my learning path, but unless you move it, the welcome lesson is going to appear at the top of the path up here. So to begin any lesson, you click this Learn button, and it will bring you to the first activity in the lesson. Now, in this activity, like I mentioned, the welcome lesson is only going to teach you 5 words or phrases, and what it's basically trying to do is familiarize you with the actual activities in the program. So there's many activities in Transparent Language Online. This is only going to walk you through a handful of them, but at least gives you a feel of how the program actually works. So this language comparison here, this is just showing you the Spanish word you're going to be learning, what the English translation of it is, and if there's any hints or comments associated with it. So you can see the word for Spanish in Spanish. You can see this is referring to the language here, so it's just letting you know if there are any hints or comments associated with it. And I can play all the sounds if I want to, all the pronunciations, or I can just play them individually.
Español,
So you're going to hear the pronunciation. You can continue to play it back as many times as you'd like until you feel comfortable with it. And then you move on to the next activity. So clicking next will mark, clicking done, will mark the activity as complete. And this little menu that popped up on the side, that's just showing you that you're moving on to the next activity in the set. So when it pops up, it's just showing you that you're moving on. If you want to see that menu again, you can come back out here and take a look at it. So, as I mentioned, Transparent Language Online tracks all your progress that you've learned along the way. You can see here that I have some activities that are marked as complete. There's a checkbox next to them, and it says complete on the side over here. Anything that doesn't say complete isn't finished yet. There are some instances where I do have some progress in the language. So right here, you can see that this little pie is starting to, the circle or pie, is starting to fill in almost all the way, but I'm not quite done with it yet. So it means that I started working on it at one point. I might have been distracted, I may have gone on to another activity, but that's just what it's doing. It's telling you that you do have some progress in the language, so it is saving that progress that you have. And same down here, you can see that the purple is starting to fill in just a little bit. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of the activities. The preview it activity, this is similar to the language comparison activity, but you're only seeing one word or phrase at a time. Again, you can continue to play the sounds over and over and over again. This little turtle here will actually slow down the pronunciation for you. So if it's a long phrase that you're having trouble with, you can actually slow it down so you can hear it a little bit slower. I'll try it with something else that's a little bit longer.
Español,
You just keep flipping through.
Español,
So it kind of slows down the pronunciation so you can hear it a little bit better. And you just work your way through all of the items in this particular activity, and then you move on to the next one. I've already done this one, but if I move on to the next one, once I'm done, it'll move me on to the pronunciation activity. This is a really cool activity. It actually allows you to compare your pronunciation to the native speaker. It's you record your voice, shows you the sound wave right on the screen for you, shows you if there's any areas that you might have messed up in, and you can compare your pronunciation to a native speaker. So I'll show you real quick how this works. C. So we'll trim my sound wave, and it's loud in here, so it's echoing. But it'll also give you a score. So if there was an area that you messed up in, which it feels I messed up on the entire word, it will show you it in this yellow bar. So if you had a longer phrase, it'll actually show you the very part of that phrase that it feels that you didn't really get it quite right. So that's where that yellow bar comes in. I can replay it so that I can hear the exact aspect that it thinks that I got wrong. And if I wanted to, I could come up here and I could actually drag and drop my mouse on a portion of the native speaker's pronunciation as well, if I wanted to just kind of hear that one little clip of the word or phrase that they said. So no matter what your score is your score. You can continue to record your pronunciation as many times as you'd like, or you can just do the one pronunciation. Like I think I did fine on that, so I'm not going to record my voice again. And I'm going to move on
Español.
to the next one. So it's up to you. If you want to continue to